Welcome back to Otaku Daikun. Dai here, and this video will be another discussion episode. The second video I ever made for this channel was on censorship and localization, discussing why aggressive localization and censorship of Japanese media was a terrible move when trying to sell products to Western anime fans. This video is a follow-up to that, making due on a promise to talk about the sexualization of anime characters, mainly women, on a moralistic level. The big question being, should anime strive to promote sexual equality? This can break off into asking, is the sexualization of anime and game characters leaving a negative impact on society? Does anime need to change? With the popularization of social media, we've seen a rise in obviously first world concerns for SJWs and feminists alike, and that discourse is diverted from talking about actual forms of female oppression or legal rights, and instead focuses on magazines, fashion, and fictional media. This sort of topic has become an internet hotbed, so much so that localizers and Japanese publishers alike don't really want to trigger or upset anyone. With so much of our Western fictional media bending backwards to churn out stories of equality, inclusion, and diversity, with a great deal of sensitivity toward representing people in fiction, internet feminists are now trying to impose those values onto anime. Essentially, just because the West is in a total craze with social justice, does that mean Japan, where this is far less prevalent, should follow suit? Should anime embrace Western values, or someone's idea of Western values? On a personal level, I find it a case of barking up the wrong tree. Of the many things I love about anime, one is definitely that anime doesn't have to be anything specific, or fit any agenda outside of a business perspective. Hideo Baba, head of development for the Tales video game series, once mentioned in an interview that he makes his games for the Japanese audience. While he's pleased that Westerners can love and adore the series, he doesn't go out of his way to specifically target Western audiences. I love that. Anime is simply what it is, and we enjoy it knowing full well what it's all about. From an artistic perspective, I want creators to make whatever they want to, with as much passion as they can gather. Without that, anime would lose what makes it unique, and it would be replaced with something far less genuine. Anyway, how does this all factor into feminism? Ultimately, some feminists take issue with the amount of fan service in anime. Fan service is an awfully loose term that isn't too specific, so I'll focus on the fact that typically, fan service refers to all the sexually gratuitous camera angles, scenes, outfits, etc. that exist primarily for the sake of arousal. In various ways, feminists have not only tried to show their discontent with such material, but they also declare it harmful to society. To address that, I'll be looking at 3 different arguments feminists have competently aimed at anime content. The first argument is the most well-known: objectification. By depicting female characters in fictional media in a sexualizing way, the characters are being objectified, which further encourages the objectification of women in the real world. Let's start by defining exactly what objectification means. A philosophical approach would be to define objectification as the denial of personhood. In philosophy, a person is someone who has autonomy, moral agency, a history, wants, needs, motivations, and is responsible for their actions. When you objectify someone, you see them as just a body or tool to serve yourself, ignoring their personhood. To that end, I'm willing to concede on one point. Yes, sexualized women in fiction are indeed objectified, but the same is true for every fictional character ever created. These are characters, after all, not real people. So they've been objects from the start. Every one was either written, performed, drawn, painted, or otherwise rendered for the sake of their creators to fulfill a certain role, whether it be the hero, the villain, the sidekick, the comic relief, or romantic interest. In fact, the only reason we see fictional characters as anything more than objects is because we have suspension of disbelief that allows us to immerse ourselves in a fictional universe, despite knowing it's fake, despite maybe even knowing how the ending goes. Essentially, whether a character is seen as a person or not is up to us viewers. Now, obviously there are various lengths that creators will go to in order to encourage seeing their characters as believable people. A heartfelt drama will try very hard to develop its characters, whereas pornography often doesn't concern itself with that. Regardless, I'd argue that both types of characters can be equally objectified by viewers. A viewer can imagine or assume autonomy and history in a character when none is presented. And likewise, a viewer can outright ignore or deny the personhood of a well-developed character. That said, there are various examples of feminists accidentally objectifying characters who have development to work with. And female anime characters often have more development than critics are willing to acknowledge. The first example is Samus Aran from the Metroid series. Initially, Samus gets a lot of praise for taking off her helmet at the end of her first game, revealing that she's actually a female bounty hunter. However, if you beat the game in a fast enough time, Samus will remove her suit to reveal her body in a pixelated sports bikini. Feminists have argued that this mechanic spoils her awesomeness as a character, using her body as a bona fide trophy for gamers to strive for. I won't deny that her body is definitely being revealed as a motivation for improving one's skill at the game. But is this really objectifying her? Does this necessarily lead to us ignoring her personhood? Or could it actually help develop her further? Let's fast forward to Metroid Fusion and Zero Mission for the Game Boy Advance, both of which you can enjoy on the Nintendo eShop, by the way. In a similar way, if you beat either game with a fast enough time or complete item collection, you will be treated to images of Samus in her alluring midriff outfit. These games are different in that we see Samus enjoying her leisure time, not on mission, instead hanging out on different planets. She's even seen chilling with some aliens. This gives us insight into Samus as a person, that after spending several hours blasting space bugs in a cramped cybersuit, perhaps Samus enjoys wearing less clothing in her spare time. Perhaps it's liberating for her, a sign of a job well done, if you will. Clearly, these pictures show she's confident and comfortable in her attire. How can we relate that back to the original game? Beating Metroid in a fast time requires practice and developed skill at the game. By the time players see Samus take off her armor, they've already formed a semi-intimate bond with her as an avatar on screen. The faster the time, the harder both Samus and the player worked, so she could be yearning for some liberation from her suit. Not only that, but the closer the player-character bond, the more comfortable Samus would supposedly be in her off-mission attire. So here we have a situation where Samus revealing her body can actually develop her further as a believable person, as opposed to an object. Hell, that gesture by itself develops her more than any other point in the first game. Ironically, calling this objectification is a rejection of all the development I just mentioned. This next example isn't Japanese at all, but it's come under fire in a similar way thanks to Anita Sarkeesian. Lara Croft, our tough Tomb Raider, has been shunned for her stellar ass. In her video on strategic butt coverings, Anita argues that the camera in Tomb Raider games focuses on her butt and discourages players from seeing her as more than just a piece of meat. Again, I'll concede that Lara is definitely a sex symbol within the gaming world, but outside of magazines and fan art, fans who actually play the Tomb Raider series will learn a lot about her, none of which is sexual. Anita can't seem to see past Lara's butt in the scene where she's in a wetsuit on a boat, but players understand the character a lot more. Turns out, Lara's about to dive in and battle shark-infested waters to seek Atlantis, untouched for centuries, so that she can not only discover new artifacts, but also reunite with her mother, who was mysteriously warped away via a portal. In the classic Tomb Raider series, Lara is presented as a capable, crafty, and confident woman. But I guess one wouldn't know if they never bothered to learn or ask. I'd even argue, to an extent, that the notorious Dead or Alive Xtreme Beach Volleyball series also gives us plenty of character autonomy. First off, all the girls in the games are invited to an island where they're to take a lovely vacation. The goal of the game is ultimately to support the girls and give them the best vacation possible. Furthermore, they're all from their original fighting games, where they each have their own reasons to fight. Their personalities shine through despite the leisurely context. Sure, in-game you can buy the girls any number of skimpy swimsuits and then take pictures via a presumed male gaze. But they'll only consider wearing an outfit they don't like if they have a good enough relationship with the player. The girls are in control in calling the shots. They'll get upset if you peek on them, and they won't just go along with your every whim. A lot of people imagine players of DOAX to be closet perverts, but there are definitely ways to play the game that show a lot of respect and concern for these fictional women. By crying objectification, you're prematurely severing any hope of understanding the characters. You're choosing to leave it at a surface-level observation. The last example is one that really irks me, and that it argues that a sexualized character's status as a sex symbol can negate the consequences of their behavior and actions. Back in the beta testing for Overwatch, a player wrote at length how they loved the character Tracer as a solid role model who's fun, silly, and talented. But after witnessing her victory pose, in which she displays her tight butt while facing away from the camera, claimed that she was being reduced to another bland sex symbol. Now, this isn't an issue with whether you like the pose or not, or whether you feel it fits her character design. It's an issue with the fact that all other traits about Tracer could be, in this person's mind, undermined by one other element or thing she's done, as if becoming a sex symbol is now her only quality. I just have to press this hypothetical. What if Adolf Hitler were actually Alice Hitler, a sexy female dictator dressed in a G-string and Daisy Dukes? Let's assume that Alice did everything that Adolf did, starting World War II and the Holocaust mainly. Would we honestly ignore all of that simply because Alice Hitler was reduced to a sex symbol? I sure hope not. Murder is murder, regardless of who commits it. Once again, you miss out on a developed character when you reduce them to an object. And the one objectifying is the critic, not the average player. These examples lead me to claim that sexualized characters aren't the cause of objectification at all. Rather, it is caused by critics and other sexist individuals refusing to see anything more than sex, or that sex is merely one aspect of a character. The second feminist argument is one I'm sure you've seen before, and I call it the bikini armor argument. Essentially, a great deal of our fictional females wear very revealing outfits despite being in professional, public, or combat situations. These outfits are criticized for being impractical, inappropriate, and demeaning to the characters wearing them. They'll cite how easy it'd be to shoot a woman in the cleavage with an arrow since her armor leaves are totally exposed, or that an outfit doesn't fit a character's occupation and undermines their status as a professional. It's easiest to point out that this sort of argument is very hypocritical and ethnocentric. Since when were we obligated to make fictional media that conform to realism? Almost nothing in anime is realistic. Not the hairstyles, hair colors, special powers, laws of physics, or outfits. The same can be said for Western media and men in general, yet nobody really complains about that. Let's look at Star Wars, for example. The Stormtroopers are mentioned to be very accurate and deadly shots, and yet they're constantly missing their targets throughout the Tridge. Furthermore, they're fully armored, but are equally vulnerable to a single shot from a blaster. Heck, the only person to actually get shot and not die is Leia in Return of the Jedi, and she's definitely not wearing armor. In the Star Wars universe, the Stormtrooper armor is more than a symbol than an actual protective device. The same can pretty much be said for all superheroes that wear spandex uniforms. Their costumes are designed to be iconic symbols, not to block bullets. Besides, why does a fictional world have to resemble the real one? Truth is, it doesn't. While our current culture might deem a certain outfit slutty or unprofessional, it's very possible that in a slightly different world, we'd have differing cultural values. If their world has magic, then it's possible a bikini could be seen as very lightweight and practical. It's possible that lawyers or other business folk would dress in lingerie and be highly respected for it. It's all part of the fantasy. That's why Dante never wears a shirt. This leads me to believe that people don't genuinely care about the practicality of an outfit, so long as sex appeal has nothing to do with it, making the argument fairly insincere. The third argument is the one I find to be the most convincing. If we assume that there's nothing wrong with a sexualized character, why do nearly all female characters in anime and games have to be sexy, or have sex play a part of their character in some form? Male characters can come in all sorts of shapes, sizes, ages, yet a majority of female characters, especially the main cast, are fit, slim, and young. Can't there be other types of female characters that aren't meant to be sexualized at all? Why doesn't anime have more transgender or racially diverse characters? I like this argument because it's actually honest. Rather than claiming sexy characters are a huge problem, it's merely asking for some more variety. I just have one problem with it, and it comes from a creative standpoint. A creator should make what they want to, what inspires or excites them. If character designers got together and decided on some arbitrary quota for representing people of all shapes, sizes, sexual preferences, identities, and races, I think the results would be way worse than most people would think. At the very least, it'd be noticeably forced. At worst, highly offensive. The thing is, Japan makes anime for themselves, and they succeed at it because they aren't trying to please everyone on Earth. That's not to say anime studios, mangaka, and artists in general can't be passionate about tackling a different character type. but there'd have to be a market for it. It'd have to come from some place of passion rather than disdain. This is why I like the concept of yaoi. Turns out some artists made a new genre of anime and manga, and it gathered a large fan base, and has grown since then. The best thing to do is find works that you enjoy and support them. That's what I'm doing with this YouTube channel, trying to share what I love about anime to the rest of the world. I'm not here to talk shit or impose on anyone. Along with this argument, I want to point out that all fictional works are essentially catering to viewer fantasy. Whether you enjoy the silliness of Senran Kagura, or the bravery and strength of Rey from Star Wars, or the progressive and unconventional Steven Universe, it's important to know that all of them are equally catering to people's desires and fantasies. And that's absolutely fantastic. Wish fulfillment is what makes fiction so great. The last topic I want to touch upon for this discussion finally connects fiction to our real world. I've already established that objectification isn't caused by sexualization, but rather by sexist individuals. Still, for those individuals who use sexualization as fuel for their sexist behaviors, should we get rid of it? This runs parallel to violence in fictional media. Should we stop making Batman films because a lunatic shoots up a movie theater claiming to be the Joker? Should we ban Grand Theft Auto because some morons think that they were inspired by the game to murder or steal? I sort of think that attitude is a detriment to our society, limiting our options for the sake of a few who just don't get it. You see, we should, and hopefully do, demand that every human consuming fictional material understands that fiction isn't real, and not everything shown is realistic or appropriate for society. Limiting the breadth of our fictional ideas is akin to limiting our ability as human beings to explore and expand our mental horizons without any form of dreadful consequence. As you can see, I've put a lot of thought into this issue, and it really works better as a conversation rather than a presentation. That said, please contribute via the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, and subscribe to Otaku Daikun for more anime lists, reviews, discussions, recommendations, and Let's Plays. Until the next video, celebrate your fandom.